Hey everyone, Matt here. So, I'm going to talk today the first time I really realised just how broken psychology in Australia is. And that was when I was doing my honours year at the University of Southern Queensland. So, I'd previously done a postgraduate diploma through Monash, and that degree and the quality of the teaching and their systems and all those things was just phenomenal. Highly recommend it if you're interested in pursuing a career in psychology. Go through Monash. They've got their shit together. USQ, which was my regional university because I'm from Toowoomba, did not, and I really wanted it to be excellent. I have a degree of civic pride in my hometown, and I wanted USQ to just be the bee's knees, but it just wasn't. So I came to psychology because I grew up in a very strange religious community, and I wanted to be able to systematically study human nature. At the time, I was more interested in doing the kind of more academic path rather than being a practitioner. Ended up being a practitioner instead for a bit. Never have been able to finalize my certifications, which is a real fucking pain in the ass. But that's what I was originally. I was aiming to do the PhD academic bullshit. Um, and I got really turned off at USQ because I realized that as a discipline, the community of psychology, at least at that regional university, and what I've now found is just how these fuckers think, because it's the most pretentious middle class community you can imagine. There is a little bit of resentment here, all right? Of course, it's not just that, and there's some lovely people, but neither here nor there. While we're having a little bit of a break from my resentments, I'm hoping you're able to see some of my kangaroo friends here. They're lovely. They're like little statues, right? It's a bit difficult to see them in this fog, but maybe that adds an aesthetic vibe to it. Getting back to my rant. Uh, so yeah, I was interested in in understanding truth because as a kid, I believed some really bizarre shit, and like I'd always been kind of told what to believe, and I wanted to be able to learn the tools to be able to study and understand reality myself. So that was what attracted me to the discipline. And uh, I was, in a way, very fortunate because my thesis supervisor was a guy called Eric Fime. I don't want anything I say to blow back on him in a bad way, but what I will say is that him and I have a similarly, like, there's a personality trait, characteristic called agreeableness. Him and I are probably less agreeable than a lot of the population. And he's a bit of a rebel, bless him. And his entire thing is research methods. He's the research methods lecturer. And whilst I didn't really apply myself to his class, I didn't really apply myself to anything at USQ because I'd done a more advanced course and I was coming down. I felt a great deal of resentment against the bureaucracy and the fact that I had these pretentious middle class shit fucks getting off on being able to decide who goes on to the next level or not. And I just decided I do not respect the authority enough to work with these people. And realized that there was this thing at the time called the 4+2 program. And I just decided, fuck you, I'm doing this instead. Getting back to what I was talking about. So his thing is research methods. And I learn all about, like, have these very in-depth conversations about statistics and how we actually, like, how the gravy gets made in psychology research. It was fantastic. And I'm also doing this thesis on training evaluation. And I'm seeing the contrast between Monash, which had its shit together, and USQ, which did not. So I'm going to stop talking about research methods and I'm going to talk to you about a woman called Andrea. My feud with Andrea is something. And to an extent, there's a yin-yang relationship where I kind of don't see, like, I think there is some degree of appreciation that we both have for characteristics of each other. But there are characteristics of Andrea which do my fucking head in. So Andrea was the assistant dean for research at USQ. She's a very well-connected psychologist in Australia. And what she was also, like, to do this kind of work, she was also the person who was in charge of the union. And this goes back, because I ended up leading my own union at USQ. So this woman, she fits a mold, okay? There's this brilliant book called Corruptible by a man called Brian Klaas. I'm not sure if I pronounce his last name correctly. I apologize to the bloke if I haven't. Brilliant book, right? And one of the things he talks about is that if you want to have a community leadership position in the modern age, the amount of flack that you'd have to deal with on a daily basis is just incredible, that you have to be a certain kind of person to be attracted to that position. And often those characteristics are narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Now, Andrea, and also sadism, and the Dark Quadrant. Andrea has these characteristics in abundance, primarily narcissism. She needs to feel special. And to an extent, I don't really blame her, because she's taken on such a miserable job. And to an extent, she's trying to make it better at USQ, because the staff there, when I was there, were miserable. Okay, so there definitely needs to be a union lead. I wish someone else was doing it, but I understand the importance of part of her work. So, what we ended up having were these very bizarre, condescending lecturers when she was teaching ethics. But before I saw that, there was this little assembly they had at the Ipswich campus. So there's two cities that USQ's primarily based on. They have more campuses. One is Toowoomba, one is Ipswich. And Ipswich is where she ends up working, because she kind of got chased out of the Toowoomba campus because she rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Now, they got all the psychology students together, and they just had this very bizarre gathering, which was streamed, and it was all about, like, you know, people asking about careers in psychology and that kind of thing. And like, yeah, that's cool. That's normal. I've seen that. I've been to ANU career fairs and been involved in that. So like, it's a common practice. It's necessary. But the way it was done was so weird. It was like she was trying to bask in the glory of her being this psychologist, this very learned middle class profession. I am a people scientist. I am so special, right? You should want to be like me. I know you want to be like me. I know you want to be me. And it was this very bizarre, the way she conducted herself was kind of like this. And it was the same, seemed culturally just how that was what the people at the Ipswich campus were. I was at Toowoomba, so I didn't see it so much. So yeah, she was like that. And then she starts teaching ethics. And remember, I was doing my previous degree through Monash, and it was external. And the people I was doing the course with were these adult students. So these people were like executives at law firms. They were radiographers who were changing careers. Like, these people were switched on people, right? They weren't looking for role models. They were adults. I was an adult, right? And I'm dealing with this bizarre woman who's kind of talking down to all of us. And I kind of flipped the shit during the ethics course. Because what she does, remembering I grew up in a very strange community where I was very much told what to believe. I was in the military. I was taught what to believe. I came to study science and people science so I can fucking study humans and understand what is real and what is bullshit. And she starts doing this thing where we start doing these ethical vignettes. And the way the vignettes work is that there'll be like an ethically, a decision where someone needs to make, like where we look at something and we're like, okay, what is the decision which is going to be most ethical in this situation? What is going, except it wasn't taught on the basis of first principles. So first principles are things like Immanuel Kant's idea that, don't ever use someone in as a means in and of themselves. So there's like a systematic study which leads up to the decision-making process. The way the criteria sheets were written was not such as if they were measuring something like we would in a qualitative study, which is what you're doing when you are marking someone's assignment. And that's how they did it at Monash, because it was a very serious institution, and there's a whole list of practices, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, for how you actually come to grade something, right? Remember, my thesis was in training evaluation, so I got to study all of this. So, and what I figured out was that what was being measured, and remember, like I had the research methods lecturer as my thesis supervisor here, so I got to learn about this. What was really being measured wasn't ethical practice and ethical decision making. So you'd abstract that into an idea which you would then measure, right? What we were really just measuring was how much we agreed with Andrea, right? So the entire class was her getting a group of students to think like her because she was such this great role model. And it was just so obvious. It was obvious that it was being done out of these emotional needs that we had to fulfill in her, whilst she's because, like, and it was just the most bizarre shit. So anyway, I ended up unionizing the students, and for the next year and a half, while I'm dealing with incredibly stressful work on top of what I'm doing, I'm making phone calls and going through an escalation thing at USQ to try and get the entire program rewritten. And they ended up doing it. They rewrote the honors thesis. I went through several layers of escalation within USQ before what happened is that all the heads of school for psychology in Southeast Queensland ended up doing a review of the course and restructured it. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, they couldn't do it internally. The the heads of school in psychology had to come into USQ and fix it. And at the same time, and this is where I get, like, you might think I'm being a little bit hubris, but I also think this process may have led to a restructuring at USQ, because they were going through a leadership change at the time. And what leaders want to do when they come into power is that they want to make everyone feel as if there's a new change of regime and things are looking different. Like there's going to be a different model of leadership. And so what they did is that they renamed the university to UniSQ, kind of the normal things people do when they're doing a cultural or change program. And you know what? I'm going to give myself 20 to 30% of the credit for that. Right? Just saying. I like to think that anyway. Who knows? I'm sure there's a lot of moving parts in this thing. So getting back to my issues with the way that this course was done, marked and done. So there's something called the APAC accreditation requirements. These accreditation requirements is what is required for a course to be a psychology course. Because when you're measuring someone's grade, like, when these people, they come in, I'll pause for a second. Okay. Psychology is a protected profession in Australia. You can't just have any degree or go through any process and call yourself a psychologist. This is where I have all these legal issues, because my registration lapsed whilst I was completing my program, right? And it lapsed because I'd been worn down and abused so badly and had witnessed so much malpractice and shitty stuff that I broke. I was having fugue states, and I read an email from AHPRA regarding my renewal, where I had the opportunity to renew it, and I misinterpreted it and I let something lapse, right? So that's my story. But we've got this thing called the APAC accreditation requirements. Now, these requirements allow a course to be called a psychology course and not just something else. Part of that is the requirement for pedagogy, and there are these, and that means that the people at the university need to sit down around and describe what process they are going to go through to provide marks, audit those marks, and measure marks. They had not done that at USQ. Every criteria sheet was just some made up thing by the examiner, and that meant that there was no that meant that they were not able to be audited, because each time there was someone from a different department a different examiner looked at it, they were having to go through an entirely different process for assigning the marks, which meant that there was no intermeasures validity, right? So there wasn't any attempt to actually measure variables in a methodical way. And this was useful to them because it allowed people like Andrea, who want to feel special, who want to be powerful, to be able to decide who gets through to the next program and who doesn't. And my hope is that a lot of that stuff got adjusted when I left. I know that different positions were created after I left to be able to assist with that monitoring, and so that these processes would be better implemented. But that was the first time I kind of realized that this profession, the people who are really attracted to it are these pretentious middle-class fuckwits. They're people who want to feel special. And it's not really the systematic study of human nature. There is some science involved with it, but people who are attracted to psychology, they're the people who want to say what human nature is. They're little Andreas who want to be the people who make people look like them and be like them. And I've found so much of this kind of bigotry whilst practicing. I have had to deal with multiple false allegations by other psychs who because I don't fit the mold that they think people should be like, decide that I mustn't be one of them. The bigotry and discrimination I've encountered has been terrible. And what I've found is that the institutions such as the Australian Health Practitioner Registration Agency, they kind of plug into this. They're not able to see what's bigotry and what's actual practice and ethical practice. It's a real shame. Just remember, when you're looking at a person who says that they're a psych, what you're most likely looking at is someone who said, I want to tell people what they should be like.